Plastic is one of the most commonly used materials in the world. Plastics are light, cost-efficient, and making it a suitable option for many industries. Sadly, plastic has a lot of disadvantages. For example, most plastics are non-biodegradable. It can take decades for them to break down, and if thrown away into nature, these plastics can end up in river streams, which eventually lead them into the sea. Due to fragmentation, plastics will break up into smaller pieces, creating particles of 1 mm to 1 micrometer, so-called microplastics. These microplastics are one of the major threats to the health of seas and oceans. Metals, metalloids, and organisms can attach to the surface of microplastics and then enter the body of other organisms. When ingested, it may cause fatal injuries and it can lead to bioaccumulation of these plastics to higher trophic levels. This way they can even end up in the human body. When talking about Texel, a beautiful island in the Wadden Sea, it is sadly not immune to the issue of plastic pollution. Texel is affected by plastic waste that washes ashore, as well as from pollution by tourists and the island's residents via wastewaters. By addressing plastic pollution on Texel, we can contribute to the broader efforts to preserve marine ecosystems and ensure a healthier planet for future generations.
In our research, we are looking at the microplastic discharge from the slaughter and the wastewater treatment plant. Before entering the wastewater treatment plant, the water was exposed to, for example, cosmetics, washing detergent, and medicines used by people on the island. Therefore, we expect to find a higher density of microplastics in there when compared to the slaughter. Most of those particles will probably have a fiber-like or microbead shape, as those are used most in clothes and cosmetics.
In order to catch the plastic particles in the slufter and the wastewater plant, we made use of two krill nets with a mass size of about 500 micrometers. By making an ingenious system of ropes and floaters, we were able to combine them into one floating structure that automatically turned itself into the flow direction of the water and rested about 1 centimeter below the water surface. At the slufter, we left the net in for 3 hours and 45 minutes and used the water velocity measurements of 10 centimeters below the surface to calculate the total water flow through the nets. At the wastewater treatment plants, we used a similar approach but left the net in for 3 hours and 30 minutes and conducted flow measurements ourselves every 30 minutes. Afterwards, we collected the content of the nets by folding them inside out and rinsing them clean with ethanol into a container. Once in the lab, we emptied the containers into aluminum trays and left them to rest overnight in order to evaporate all the ethanol. As there also was a very high amount of organic matter in the nets, we decided to use hydrogen to evaporate the organic matter. Eventually, we let the hydrogen peroxide evaporate as well and moved the last bit of substance into the petri dishes. After these were completely dry, we taped a paper to the back of the petri dishes and used the binoculars in the lab so we could easily count the amount of microplastics per square meter and now then the shape and color of the microplastics.
We categorized the microplastics we found in each sample by shape and color. The first table shows the amount of microplastics of a particular color in each sample. As you can see, black was evidently the color that was present the most in every sample. Blue, red and green, on the other hand, were less prevalent. Concerning the shapes, fiber was the most common one. We calculated the amount of microplastics per cubic meter for both the slaughter and the wastewater treatment plant. We achieved this by first multiplying the flow velocity through the nets with the surface of the opening of the net. This resulted in the discharge in cubic meter per second. Then, we multiplied this number by the amount of time the net was in the water at each location to get the total amount of cubic meters that had passed through the net. We divided the amount of plastics we found by this number, resulting in the amount of microplastics per cubic meter.
Our results show evidence that our hypothesis was indeed correct. As expected, we found more microplastics part per cubic meter of filtered water at the wastewater treatment center. We also found a lot more fiber-like shapes in comparison to round or spiky in both samples. We were surprised by the amount of microplastics at the slufter, especially the amount of fibers was surprisingly high. A study conducted by Imogen Napper in 2022 revealed that the ropes used in maritime industry contribute to a substantial amount of microplastic contamination in our oceans. A possible hypothesis for this high amount of fibers could therefore be that this is due to the fisheries in the Waddenzee that are happening around Texel. A recommendation for future research could therefore be to further investigate the found microplastic fibers and see if these are actually the same fibers used in fishing ropes. As with every research, there were things that could have gone better. Our worst regret is that we lost one of the 2 samples for the wastewater treatment center, which made our observations and results for that particular place less accurate and more difficult to compare to the Slufter.
Overall, we're quite happy with the outcome of our research. Our experimental setup has proven to work, and we were able to confirm our hypothesis. Thank you very much for watching.